Hello everyone, we're going to have a look at the circulatory system. Now this is one of the topics in Unit 2 which we normally do in Year 12, but we've missed a wee bit of practical work in Year 11. Obviously we'll do that when we get back to school at some stage. So we finished the theory part of Unit 1, but we're going to move on and do some theory from Unit 2 so that we're ahead of the game when we go back to school in September. So I'm sure you can remember bits and pieces about the circulatory system from Year 9 in science. And you probably remember circulatory system is made up of the heart and the blood vessels, the arteries, veins, capillaries, and obviously the blood that flows inside those. Now, the heart is the pump that moves the blood through the whole network of blood vessels. Why do we need to have blood? Well, blood is there to transport things. So if we think about what every cell needs to be able to respire. And for respiration, we need to have oxygen and glucose. And we make and run out of space, so carbon dioxide and water. And obviously energy. Okay, so every cell needs to undergo respiration, and so every cell needs a good supply of oxygen, which it gets from the air you breathe into the lungs. When the blood flows through the lungs, it picks up the oxygen and carries it around and delivers it to every cell in your body. It needs to pick up glucose, so it's going to pick that up from the small intestine. As you studied in Year 11, when you eat food, it gets digested, and carbohydrates get broken down into molecules like glucose and other simple sugars. Your blood will absorb those in the small intestine and carry it through the rest of your blood vessels and offload it to all the cells that need it. So the cells undergo respiration and they produce energy, and the cell will use that energy to do whatever it's there to do, whether it's a nerve cell, a brain cell, a cell detecting light in your eyes, whatever, it will need energy for that. So energy is used up, the cell produces carbon dioxide, and so that has to get taken out of your body, so it has to get transported from the cell round to the lungs so you can breathe it out. And water as well, your cells will make some water. Your kidneys are responsible for the water level in your blood, and you've looked at that already. So far we've said circulatory system is there to transport things around the body. And things like nutrients, like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, things like that. To transport oxygen, it transports carbon dioxide. It also transports another waste product called urea. And it eventually goes into the urine and you excrete it. And as well as that, it transports hormones. About a month ago, you were studying about insulin, how it's made in the pancreas, and the pancreas releases it into the blood, and the bloodstream carries it around until it actually reaches the liver, and then it performs its job there. So let's think about blood then. So we've talked about the two main functions, just to recap what we said. The other thing that the blood does is protect against disease. And in Year 10, we looked at how your blood has got cells like white blood cells, and we looked at things like phagocytosis and making antibodies, and we'll touch on those in another unit later on. So for now, we're thinking of transport, and we're thinking of really fighting disease, protecting us from infection. So let's look at blood then. When you're a bit older, you might go to the blood donors, and this is what little bags of donated blood look like. So it looks like red paint to some extent, but it's not red paint. If we were to take blood and separate it out, it would look like that. There would be three main sections. So we've got blood cells, we've got red blood cells and white blood cells, and then we've got this yellowy liquid called plasma. So if we look at the red blood cells, you should remember that they've got this special shape, which is pushed in on both sides. So it's concave on both sides. And so we call it a biconcave disc shape. And the diagram underneath is just a cross section of what it looks like. Main function of these cells is to carry oxygen around your body. And they do that because inside every red blood cell is packed full with a red pigment called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a pigment that is very rich in iron. And so you need to eat foods that will give you a good supply of iron so that you've got the right number of red blood cells to carry oxygen around, so your cells will have lots of energy. So red blood cells, biconcave disc shape, they are packed full of hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen. The shape of the cell, because it dips in on both sides, it has a greater surface area. And so it can absorb more oxygen because of its massive surface area to volume ratio. One unusual thing about red blood cells is that they do not have a nucleus. So you learnt way back in year 8, every cell has a nucleus. This is the exception to that rule. Red blood cells don't have a nucleus. In fact, some books describe them as anucleate, which means without a nucleus. The fact they don't have a nucleus means that they are absolutely packed full with hemoglobin, so they can carry more hemoglobin and carry more oxygen. Your blood should have about 5 million red blood cells in 1 centimetre cubed. So there are millions and millions and millions of those in just a small volume of your blood. You have fewer white blood cells. White blood cells come in various different shapes, but they're a lot bigger than the red blood cells. In fact, that's not really drawn to scale. They would be much bigger in comparison to the red blood cell. And later on, you'll learn that there are ones called phagocytes and ones called lymphocytes. But the white blood cells are the ones that fight disease. Okay, so these ones here, the lymphocytes, make antibodies. And last year, you would have learnt how they attach onto the antigens on the surface of the pathogens. These ones here, phagocytes, engulf and digest microorganisms that cause disease. Okay, and then the plasma is this yellowy liquid there. Now, if we have a look at some of these cells, if we were in school, we'd be looking at slides of human blood. Now, you're not allowed to look at your own blood for sort of safety reasons, but there are slides that we can buy in, and so you'd have a chance to look at these, and this is what it would look like. So these are the red blood cells here, and here we've got a white blood cell. Okay, this isn't something you'd see in school. These are red blood cells, but they're viewed using an electron microscope. Now, electron microscopes are very tens of thousands of pounds, and they magnify things like 500,000 times, which is a lot bigger than the 400 times that your school microscopes would magnify things. And so you can see red blood cells, they look a bit like donuts. They don't actually have holes there, but it dips down there. So you can see the biconcave disc shape. And here again, more red blood cells. And this one's actually caught in a blood clot. We've got these fibres here. So somebody's maybe cut their finger, and we've started to get the clotting process underway, and we'll look at that later. Okay, going back to the light microscope, lots of red blood cells, one lymphocyte, a special type of white blood cell in the middle. So the lymphocytes are the ones that make antibodies. More red blood cells again, 2 white blood cells, and these white blood cells are called phagocytes. And the phagocytes are the ones that engulf and digest the bacteria or whatever has infected your blood. So we've got a very short video just to show you this. So there's phagocyte chasing after bacteria. Okay, now back to PowerPoint. So we've seen the red blood cells, the white blood cells. There are also fragments of cells called platelets. So these are platelets here. Platelets are really important if you damage a blood capillary, because platelets will start off the blood clotting process. So if you got a cut, a small cut on your finger or some your leg or something like that, the platelets will initiate a series of chemical reactions which will cause a plasma protein called fibrinogen to be converted into fibres, and these fibres are called fibrin. So remember, we saw a photograph earlier with red blood cells and these kind of fibres around it. That's the fibrin fibres. So if you got a cut, these fibres would get crisscrossed around your cut, and some red blood cells, white blood cells would get trapped in it, in this kind of mesh, and that would form a blood clot, which would then dry and form a scab, and that would seal your cut. And that's really good because it would stop anything getting in, stop any bacteria or viruses getting in, and it stops you losing any more blood. So platelets are vital because your blood needs to be able to clot if the blood vessels get damaged. There's more platelets, red blood cells, so they're just really fragments of cells, but you need to use the word platelet. Okay, the plasma then that we talked about. So about half of your blood is this yellowy liquid, and this is where most of the things are transported. Now we've said that oxygen is transported in the red blood cells, but all the other things get transported in the plasma. So we're thinking here of glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, thinking of vitamins, all those kind of things. So those nutrients, as well as that, the carbon dioxide that the cells make during respiration will get into the plasma and get carried back to the lungs and breathed out. Hormones would be transported in the plasma, and this waste substance, the toxic waste called urea, would also get transported in the plasma. So its main role is transporting those chemicals that we've talked about there. There are salts like magnesium, potassium, phosphorus and so on. They are in the plasma as well, and that's really important to keep all the nutrients and the minerals and so on in the right concentration. Now, on page 4 in your booklet, you've got a picture of 2 blood smears. So if we look at the first one, blood smear A, you're asked to label red blood cells. So we've got lots of red blood cells here. So you can just get your ruler, draw a line and label one of those as a red blood cell. And you have to label a white blood cell. So there's a phagocyte. You can label it as a phagocyte and put in brackets white blood cell, or that's a lymphocyte, white blood cell in brackets. There's another phagocyte. You just need to label one of those. What else could we label? At the very bottom, it says also label platelets and plasma in one of the blood smears. So a line going to any of those bits there is pointing to plasma, because if it's not a red blood cell, a white blood cell or a platelet, it's plasma. So this is all plasma here. Platelets, we've got little fragments here, so those are platelets. If we look at the next slide, B, there's your red blood cells, white blood cell, plasma, and some platelets. Okay, so make sure you get your labels drawn using pencil and a ruler, and I would just label red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets and plasma in both A and in B. Good practice for you. And then finally, on page 5, you've got this question. So write the answers down on page 5 in your booklet, and then the next assignment, it'll take you 3 minutes just to type your answers into the Google form, and then I can check that you've got the right answers. Okay? Bye.